watching, pumping on social media pictures of the border fence with a gap in it. There are multiple of these. A few of these, the IDF is refusing to comment, but they are indeed aware of this.
Well, let's go back down now to Gaza. As we mentioned, this comment by the defense minister of Gallant that Hamas has lost control of parts, certainly of the northern part of the strip. Of course, that opens up the possibility to start talking about what could come next. What is the day after? And let's get back to that briefing you had with Foreign Minister Eli Cohen. And anything on that issue, increasing people looking at the potential day after in Gaza.
Right, well, I'll focus on what we can report and collect. What's fascinating is there's an avenue that the Israeli government is going to use the provision of humanitarian aid as a kind of bridge to the day after. What do I mean? A potential sea corridor opening up from Cyprus, right? There would be a boat in Cyprus, there were security checks by the Israeli military, and then that boat would go from Cyprus to Gaza, carrying humanitarian aid. Another avenue, right? Not just the trucks crossing over from Egypt, but aid being provided by sea, and that corridor, the plan is, would continue to operate on the day after. So again, using the provision of humanitarian aid and the avenues for providing humanitarian aid as a kind of bridge and a way of establishing facts for the day after. And again, the game plan, certainly from Eli Cohen's perspective, is a complete disengagement of Israel from the Gaza Strip, from the civilian perspective. No passage of people, no passage of commercial goods. As he put it quite memorably, the coordination office, meaning at the border, will be turned into a museum. Meaning from his perspective, those border crossings at Erez, at Karni, would simply stop functioning. And there would be a complete border closure between the Gaza Strip and the state of Israel. All of the aid would come in from Egypt or from the sea. Maybe easier said than done. For starters, Israel wants, as we've heard from the Prime Minister, right, security control over the Gaza Strip. Security envelope. Exactly. So the military would be able to cross those borders, but the civilian side would come from Egypt or from the sea. How will that play out internationally? And also, of course, as has been said, the Biden administration, right, is still looking for a passage to a two-state solution, seeing the Gaza Strip as, in a sense, connected with the West Bank, right? That would envision some kind of connection through the state of Israel, maybe not physically at first, right? Obviously not, but at least in principle. So again, how is the Israeli government going to be able to argue on one hand for the security connection between Israel and the Gaza Strip, which is going to be fundamental, right, given all that's happened, but a civilian disengagement and aid coming not only from Egypt, from across the sea. Finally, one final note on the briefing: the security of Israeli missions abroad, the extent and the number of warnings against those missions. We can't elaborate too much, but Caleb, I'm just telling viewers, don't underestimate the challenge, don't underestimate the scope, and don't underestimate the depth of the problem and the potential warnings that Israeli diplomats and Israeli missions face abroad.
Right, and I just want to remind viewers, maybe with so much shorter memories of you're younger than me, that in the 1990s, following the signing of the Oslo Accords, Israel could facilitate the building of a new port in Gaza and a new airport. And of course, that was the original intention, to envision for Gaza to be have its own connections. It was only really after the outbreak of the Second Intifada, and then of course the takeover by Hamas that ended that dream of that, and perhaps could be revised following the displacement of Hamas from Gaza Strip.
To be clear, no talk about an airport right now.
Anyway, even if talking about port.
And also, by the way, right, there are technical issues to be overcome in terms of actually having ships of that size be able to come to Gaza. By the way, we should also mention, we saw Joseph Borrell earlier on, the U.S. Foreign Policy Chief. He is also talking about the sea corridor, so there's interest from there.
We have to go out for a break, Ali. We could pick this up when we come back. Stay with us, though. We're going to continue our special broadcast. Israel's war against Hamas Day 38. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our special broadcast on I-24 News. Let's move now to the United States, where Jewish groups from across the political and religious spectrum are set to come together tomorrow for a mass rally in Washington, D.C. That's to express both support for Israel and against the wave of anti-Semitism that has surged in the U.S. since October 7th. For more, let's go to our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim in New York. And Mike, we've seen no end to scenes of these pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel, some could say anti-pro-Hamas rallies in the U.S. over the past month. What about this rally tomorrow in Washington?
This is the Jewish community, the pro-Israel community's answer to what we've been seeing out on the streets here, and sometimes violent pro-Hamas demonstrations throughout the United States. The National Mall tomorrow will be filled from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 8 to 10 p.m. Israel time, with what organizers told us this morning will be anywhere from 40 to 60,000 expected attendees. There'll be speeches throughout the afternoon, though the exact speaker list won't be released until tonight. But listen, every Amtrak train from New York to Washington is booked up tomorrow. Believe me, I checked. I'm glad I got my ticket in advance. Buses from major cities, coast buses have been booked. Every Jewish organization, Jewish schools are closing down tomorrow, sending their students, sending their faculty to Washington for this event. We expect it to be a pretty extraordinary moment here in American Jewry coming up tomorrow in D.C.
All right, but speaking of D.C., Mike, what is the status of this move to get this emergency funding and aid to Israel? Figures like $14 billion. Had it thrown around. Mike Johnson, the new Speaker of the House, was just in Israel on a solidarity visit. But what is the prospect of him actually getting that aid, the bill for that through Congress, or at least through the House?
Now, solidarity is always good, but we've got to get down to brass tacks at some point here, and it looks like the aid bill is stuck in Congress due to the internal political machinations of the Republicans here, who have tried to attach to that aid cuts to the IRS, which are non-starter with Democrats, and the bill sitting outside the House. It's passed the House, but there is no chance whatsoever in a Democratic-led Senate, and no real path forward here. And on top of that, by the way, government shutdown is looming on Friday if no continuing resolution is passed, and it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of support or enough support in the House, let alone the Senate, to pass what the Republicans want to pass right now in terms of a continuing resolution. So this aid bill is simply stuck in the mud right now, and there doesn't appear to be any clear path out of it, at least within the next few weeks. It could possibly take months to work through what needs to be worked through internally here within the Congress to actually get to foreign aid that's needed for Israel and Ukraine at all.
All right, Mike, stay with us, because another big event coming up in the U.S. is this meeting on Wednesday between President Joe Biden and the Chinese President Xi Jinping. It's going to be the first face-to-face discussion they've had in a year. It's going to be at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in San Francisco. Now, of course, bilateral relations between the world's two leading powers are going to surely dominate that discussion. But the Israel-Hamas war will also likely be on their agenda. Here are comments today from both China's and Iran's foreign ministries touching on the topic.
The conflict in the Gaza Strip has been going on for more than a month. The humanitarian situation there is now extremely grave. The difficulty facing Shifa Hospital epitomizes the humanitarian crisis in the whole Gaza region. China calls for an immediate ceasefire among the conflicting parties, everything possible to protect civilians, and a greater humanitarian aid effort to ease the humanitarian crisis. Relevant parties need to take substantive measures and make a greater effort to this end.
The Chinese government is expected to advise the American authorities, especially their American peers, based on correcting the wrong behavior it has towards the Palestine and Gaza issue. And hopefully, the American government will listen listen wisely to its Chinese counterpart in this regard.
Mike, no shortage of topics that Washington and Beijing disagree on, from, of course, Taiwan to Ukraine, just to their trade issues. But it looks like now the Israel-Hamas war is going to be added to that list.
Unavoidable. I mean, you know, China, with its relations with the U.S., with its impact that it's made in the Middle East, through its Belt and Road Initiative, really gaining influence over the last 5-6 years. In fact, several countries like Saudi Arabia kind of hedged toward China, and Israel, by the way, included in that, have hedged toward China, fearful that America wouldn't have its back at a moment of truth here. So China does have influence in the Middle East. It's also run cover for the likes of Russia and Iran at the UN Security Council when it comes to you know, demeaning Israel and backing up Hamas essentially at the UN Security Council. So there'll be much to discuss here between the U.S. and China. It's unavoidable right now at any meeting, any kind of summit amongst world leaders, whether the U.S. and China are involved or not, to avoid the repercussions of the Israel-Hamas war right now. It really impacts everything globally at this moment in time.
And I was to think that the Israeli government, or in particular, Prime Minister Netanyahu, did try to sort of play the so-called China card in recent years to lessen diplomatic pressure from Europe and even the U.S. on it. And now we're in a situation where China has firmly re-established itself in sort of an opposition's camp, at least to Israel, on these issues.
Yeah, Israel has tried to do kind of as much business with China as it can get away with in terms of its relationship with the United States. And in a sense, I think that will remain true even after the war, given how important China is. That said, look, the Chinese have discovered that they're not just a whale that comes to the Middle East because they need to eat oil, right, so to speak, and sell their goods and consume and be here for economic reasons. As an emerging superpower, they've discovered that they have political interests here as well in confronting the United States. And listen, the era of balancing between the United States and China may be coming to an end, right? People laughed at me in a sense when a few years ago I talked about a division between the Chinese and the United States and the Middle East. We saw that on stage at the UN General Assembly in September with Netanyahu's red marker, right? A kind of division of the Middle East between a pro-American and pro-Chinese bloc. You could argue that this war has only accelerated it, and that a coming normalization in the medium term between Israel and Saudi Arabia, united under the American hug, if you will, under the American embrace, could be a further development in the hardening of blocs, including in the Middle East between the U.S. and China. I've always said that the Chinese factor was not going to be a factor in taking the United States out of the Middle East, pivoting the U.S. to the Indo-Pacific, would actually be what brings the United States back to the Middle East. And I suspect we're about to see that play out in the next few years.
All right, I want to thank Mike Wagenheit for joining us, Mike. I just have an announcement. It looks like the briefing, the nightly briefing by IDF spokesman Riyad Moldeo Hungary has been moved to 9:30 local time in Israel, more than an hour after. Now, that could be a sign, of course, of the latest developments, waiting for the latest developments in Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza, which has been intensifying today, as we've been reporting. IDF really asserting control over the northern part of the Strip, and Hamas losing whatever control it had in that area. Now, as this happens, Israel's security and intelligence apparatus have been able to obtain more details about that surprise attack waged by Hamas on October 7th, and also just how deep it was intended to go. Our senior defense correspondent Jonathan Regev has more on the latest actions from Gaza and the latest information to get out from there.
Slowly but decisively, the IDF is taking over more and more of the northern Gaza Strip. Every movement is dangerous, as explosive tunnels can appear in every step, and terrorists can still pop up from the ground. As the forces push forward, they once again find evidence of civilian areas being used by terrorists for their purposes, sometimes using their own homes and families as shields.
In the home of the Northern Brigade ammunition chief of the Islamic Jihad, we found plenty of ammunition, military vests, military uniform, along with images of the leaders of the Iranian Axis.
As opposed to the terrorists, Israel is hoping to minimize civilian casualties. That is why fuel is provided by IDF soldiers to the Shifa hospital, despite the concern it will eventually be used by the terrorists hiding in the tunnels below the hospital. That is also the reason behind the daily safe passage corridor
But the road itself is open. On Salahuddin Street, the road is clear.
As the fighting now wages in the strip, the plans Hamas had for the fighting within Israeli territory are now revealed. According to the Washington Post, some of the militants carried enough food, ammunition, and equipment to allow them to head deep into Israel, much deeper than they eventually did. According to the report, it was not only major Israeli cities they were after, but possibly wanted to reach the West Bank, thus uniting the two Palestinian fronts in what would have been a major propaganda victory. It was a very ambitious plan, which the entire Israeli security establishment simply missed.
Whenever something that is going to happen, and we don't believe that it might happen, or we don't want to believe, we find all the explanations, the excuses, in order to explain ourselves that this is not true.
Once again, Israel learned the hard way that the plans and capabilities of the other side should be taken seriously. The Israeli mobilization may have stopped the plan of combining the fronts, but the price paid, more than 1,000 civilians in the border communities who were killed, should forever serve as a reminder.
Ariel, disturbing to think just how ambitious that the Hamas plan was and how far they were able to come on it. But just to show you how quickly the world could turn, so to speak, pictures coming out of Gaza this evening that really hit home that point we've been making here in the studio about how much Hamas has lost control of northern Gaza, at least.
Yeah, they've lost effective control. So, this picture is our troops from the IDF's Golani Brigade posing inside Gaza's parliament building. This is after taking control over the site. Now, if you're wondering where the parliament building is, so it's in Gaza City's main Omar al-Mukhtar Street. It is about 3 or 4 blocks to the east of Shifa Hospital, and that just illustrates how deep inside Gaza City Israeli troops are. Obviously, a historic photo from inside the parliament in the Gaza Strip, parliament that hasn't really been active since
I would imagine has not been active.
Not too active, but indeed the fact that IDF forces reaching the site so quickly, posing, obviously this is good for Israeli IDF morale.
Yeah, I'll say I'm not always a big fan of the performative photography of the troops inside Gaza, but this is an exception. This is a major site. It has real meaning for the soldiers to be standing there with Israeli flags in demonstrating what Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said a short time ago, that Hamas control is falling apart in the northern part of the Strip. The Israeli military is establishing that control with all that implies for the success of the war and all that means, hopefully for the better, right, for Gaza civilians.
Right, I want to get back for a minute to that report of Jonathan Regaz and the plan by Hamas to even try to make it into the West Bank, if possible, to link Gaza and the West Bank. Part of their strategy, it seems that they were counting on, was a mass uprising in the West Bank, and there has been certainly an upsurge in terror activity in the West Bank over the past month, Ariel, and an upsurge and an increase in Israel's response to it. But at least Israel has been managed to contain it. So the deeper aspirations of Hamas to create that uprising, that popular uprising in the West Bank, did not come to fruition.
Maybe not in the West Bank and in Israel, but they did also call on people in the world, supporters of Hamas, supporters of the Palestinian people, to carry out an uprising outside the borders of Israel that we are seeing happening. I mean, you have crowds in London and New York calling for a new intifada. So, indeed, they at least heeded their call. But if we're talking about the plans, the original plans of Hamas on October 7th, I think the best illustration, besides the battle plans that were found and the interrogation of Hamas terrorists who were captured following their rampage, just the amount of explosives, the weapons, the sheer volume. They're saying that they had different explosive experts in the IDF saying that the quantity of explosive devices, just devices that open locked doors in homes, they found hundreds of unused devices of that kind. And that is just one example. They indeed plan to get as far as they could, as many homes as they could, and not just bombs and explosives to places. But again, hundreds of bombs to enter civilian homes. This is a fact. I mean, these are weapons that IDF forces exposed, and that is a further proof to how far they plan to get to. Obviously, connecting a land bridge, the land corridor to the West Bank, a clear that would have been a clear, a significant achievement. And also, they did plan to stay, and they had a year to keep them from many days, sustain them for many days inside Israel. But the fact is that the emergency squads in the different border communities and the initial forces that did somehow make it to the scene at already 10 a.m., 11 a.m., they blocked the possibility of Hamas to take it even further, make it even more deadly. For them, they tried to kill as many soldiers and civilians as
Yes, and certainly, unfortunately, did succeed beyond at least what Israel thought would be capable of.
Yeah, just even,
Of course, it could have been worse. But I want to go on. You mentioned that those protests in London, those rallies, pro-Palestinian, maybe just as more accurately anti-Israel, in some cases anti-Jewish. Now, Israel's war against Hamas is impacting on the political atmosphere in many other countries, including, as we just said, the UK. Now, in London today, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, sacked his Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, after she spoke out strongly against those pro-Palestinian protests, such as the one yesterday on Armistice Day in the British capital. She said police should be taking a tougher stance against incitement being spoken there. Now, Sunak also brought back into 10 Downing Street today the former Prime Minister, David Cameron, to serve as Foreign Minister, a very rare political move in the UK. For more, let's go to our senior UK correspondent, Jonathan Santidoni, in London. First of all, let's just talk about Suella Braverman, because it does seem her fate was decided by her opposition or her outspokenness on those rallies that we've seen in London and other British cities.
Well, I think that was definitely the final straw for Suella Braverman. She made a point of saying that she was very much disapproving of those protests, those rallies. She called them hate marches in a piece that she wrote, and that's really what did for her in the end, because the Times article from last Thursday is one that she had to pass through number 10, as is normal for a member of the cabinet. They suggested some changes and she ignored those suggestions. So at that point, I think, rather than even the content of what she was saying, which wasn't really that far out of line with the government's position, it was the fact that she was just insubordinate that meant that he had to get rid of her. And it was a convenient moment as well, because Suella Braverman has had several other issues recently. She said that homelessness was a lifestyle choice not that long ago. She's also been very closely associated with the policy of sending illegal migrants to Rwanda rather than keeping them in the UK. And all of these things meant that her name was coming up more and more in not so favourable ways, which was just a problem and a distraction for a Prime Minister who's trying his best to hold it together for a general election probably next year, which he's fully expected to lose.
Right, and let's talk about David Cameron. I mean, beyond just for people who study British political history, it's pretty unusual move, but I think for us more significant is if there's any way perhaps can impact on British policy towards Israel and the conflict here, which has been, some would say, surprisingly supportive. And does David Cameron's return to Whitehall signal maybe a shift in that at all?
Well, we'll have to wait and see on that one. It's not entirely obvious that it will make a big difference. As you say, I think the current situation has been one where Britain's been unusually supportive of Israel. Not that Britain isn't normally supportive, but it's just been extra supportive this time round. But that's been true the world over, I think, because I think that the scale of the attack, the savagery, the brutality of the Hamas attack on the 7th of October resonated around the world. I think it was very difficult for countries to do anything other than support Israel wholeheartedly in those circumstances. But as you've seen, that has started to slip around the world, a bit slower than it usually does when there's an engagement in Gaza. So we'll see if David Cameron makes a difference on that. David Cameron as Foreign Secretary is an interesting choice, not necessarily focusing on the Middle East, but because he's had a few foreign policy disasters in his time as Prime Minister, not least Brexit, which whatever one thinks about the outcome, he very much stuck his name to the Remain side. He's the one that's responsible for having called the referendum in the first place to try and get rid of the problem altogether. He then went to the EU to try to renegotiate Britain's position in the EU so that he could campaign to remain. The EU rejected that, gave him absolutely nothing, and he came back and campaigned to stay in the EU anyway, and then lost. That's what ended his career. He stepped down immediately after that, both as Prime Minister and then as a Member of Parliament. So in fact, we're in the unusual position that he's becoming the Foreign Secretary without actually being an elected Member of Parliament. Rishi Sunak has had to make him a Lord, and as a Lord he's able to become a member of the Cabinet, here the Foreign Secretary. And that's also worth noting, because we now have a Prime Minister who is never elected by the general population to be Prime Minister, who's appointing a Foreign Secretary who's not been elected at all as a Member of Parliament in this Parliament. So it's looking less and less democratic, the government, though Rishi Sunak's hoping that getting a previous Prime Minister in, a sort of elder statesman, somebody with experience, and who also is not a threat to his job in the future. There's very little chance that David Cameron will be trying to take over as leader of the Tory party or Prime Minister in the future. He's been there and done that. I think that Sunak's balancing these two things together and hoping that maybe this will be a very big and bold decision that might make a difference. But in terms of Israel, I can't see it shifting the government's position on the war at the moment.
Well, unlike the UK and Israel we've had in the recent political history, certainly examples of prime ministers both kept coming back into office and even coming back to serve in cabinet positions. Ayub Barak is one example of that. Jonathan Sacerdoti, thank you for that. Now, heading south again, Kibbutz Yad Mordechai, which is just north of the Gaza Strip, holds a storied place in Israeli history, thanks to the valiant stand its defenders took against the invading Egyptian army in 1948's War of Independence. Now, on October 7th, Israeli forces at Yad Mordechai once again found themselves under attack and once again proved their heroic mettle. Louis Shapira has that story.
Kibbutz Yad Mordechai, bordering the Gaza Strip. This beautiful place is mostly famous for its honey factory and its museum. But on October 7th, it became famous for another reason. It was one of the communities attacked by Hamas terrorists. They were trying to come in here, with fully equipped RPGs and all the rest. We have a small border police unit here, which happened to be away because that one, the number of rockets that were falling was enormous. Together with a security team from the kibbutz, who also were, for many reasons, but one of them because of the number of rockets that were falling, and they got calls from their friends from the Moshav and Kibbutz Sarad, from other kibbutzim, saying there's a terrorist attack. So everybody was awake. As these six came close, the military, the police, the border police came down, and there was a gunfight. You can see all this was damaged by hand grenades. There's a pole over there with the RPG hit. This whole area, there was a gunfight that went on for 20-something minutes. The 12 terrorists were killed.
The story of Yad Mordechai goes back to 1943. A group of Jewish activists moved to another kibbutz in the north. In 1948, during Israel's independence war, the kibbutz was attacked by Egyptian forces, which invaded the new state.
The members of the kibbutz, together with a small unit from the Palmach, took these trenches which were here. These are the original trenches, and the idea was that they had to stop the Egyptian army for several days until the new army, the new IDF that was just being established, was able to come down south with its forces, prepare itself north of here in a junction called Ad Halom, up until now, which is just north of Ashkelon, and then be ready and prepared for the Egyptian army to come to block them from entering into Israel.
The name Yad Mordechai honors Mordechai Levitch, the leader of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. The museum is also dedicated to this prominent event, which shaped the history of the Jewish people. On October 23, a rocket fell inside the museum, damaging the exhibition room, which models the bunker which was used by Levitch in the Warsaw Ghetto Jewish resistance movement in 1943.
The missile rocket penetrated the ceiling and came in right into here, landed in here, and that's why you see this whole area damaged. And we covered the entrance because of rain, but beforehand light came in. The whole museum was flooded with water. It hit the water system, and nobody knew from the kibbutz members that the museum was hit because we were in a wartime, and nobody was paying attention until several days went by and the water just flowed out of the museum. So the museum was significantly damaged. It was actually under the water, and that's why we're in dark right now. No electricity, no water.
Ironically, IDF troops who came to secure the kibbutz a few weeks ago were stationed inside the trenches used in the independence war, creating a direct line between 1943, 1948, and 2023.
let's talk a little more about the hospitals. That has been the focus now. We heard from Yosef Burrell. We've seen Israel's response. Israel at the Al-Quds Hospital, now Shifa Hospital. That is shaping up at least the key battle for this part of the conflict.
The drama continues and maybe reaching its crescendo. We've obviously talked about it a lot over the last few days, but it just bears repeating the element of drama here, right? The largest hospital in the Gaza Strip on one hand, and Hamas's Pentagon on the other. This is, in a sense, the Super Bowl of international law, in a sad sense, and obviously a horrific position for the Israeli military and for our society to be in. Has to be handled in an incredibly delicate way. Again, all of us should be very, very cautious about the information coming out of there. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of disinformation. Trust only trusted sources. But again, a drama that may be nearing its conclusion and that has taken on outsized importance, I think, justifiably. And one final thought, looking beyond the immediate term, we've talked about the diplomatic arena, the West Bank, of course, the situation in the north, but again, that half of the Gaza Strip below Wadi Gaza, where the civilians are, the question of what is going to be the Israeli military and Israeli government's approach to that, if in fact Eli Cohen is right, that there is a narrow diplomatic window, what is the Israeli government, military, and security cabinet and war cabinet going to do but half of the Gaza Strip where Hamas is still in control?
So that is a good question, and we'll be talking about that more in the program. Ultimately, thank you for joining us. Ariel Osron, please stay with us as we continue. We are going out for a break, but please do stay with us. We'll have the second hour of the Voice broadcast as we continue to focus day 38 of Israel's war against Hamas. Stay with us. We'll be back at the top of the hour.
Israel is at war. Make an investment in Israel bonds. It is the most powerful and direct way to stand with Israel. Visit israelbonds.com and invest now.
Made for Me, a unique concept in Israel. Custom-made men's fashion to your measurements. Made for Me, designer of all your events. Schedule your appointment at www.madeforme.co.il. Made for Me, official dresser of I-24 News.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Israel is in a state of war. Families completely gunned down in their beds. We have no idea where he is. Our soldiers are fighting on the front line. The general perception is something that certainly needs to be fought as well.
Esta semana en News 24, Israel bajo ataque. News 24 en español trae el análisis y la información de los acontecimientos de la guerra, espadas de hierro.
Entrevistas exclusivas, reportes desde la zona de guerra, la reacción de los países hispanoparlantes.
News 24, el único medio en español que te mantiene informado y conectado con la comunidad latina en Israel. News 24, únicamente en I-24 News.
action. There are women with breast cancer who rely on their ongoing medications. Women with chronic illness, including complex cardiac conditions.
Welcome to or back to this special broadcast on I-24 News. I'm Caleb in the lead. It's day 38 of Israel's war against Hamas, and the IDF continues to make significant gains in Gaza, saying today its forces have taken out almost half of the terror group's top field commanders in the northern half of the Strip. But that is coming at a price, with the IDF confirming the deaths of 2 more soldiers, bringing to 44 the number of fallen in the Gaza operation. Another fatality in the north as well, as a civilian worker for Israel's electric company, 56-year-old Shalom Aboudi, dies from wounds sustained yesterday from Hezbollah rocket fire. This as Israel continues to strike military positions of the Iran-backed militia inside South Lebanon. Let's go now to the south of Israel, to Sderot, and our correspondent there, Zach Anders. Zach, it sounds like really Israel making very significant gains there in Gaza City, really narrowing in now on the Shifa Hospital, which is, of course, the site of also one of the top command centers, or the one top command center of Hamas in the northern Gaza Strip.
And Caleb, coming in this evening, Defense Minister Gallant says that Hamas has lost control of the Gaza Strip. This at the same time we are seeing independently confirmed pictures, photographs from Israeli troops inside the defunct Palestinian parliament building. That's notable because this is several blocks away from Shifa Hospital, where the battle or the siege for that hospital is ongoing. Underneath lies what the IDF says is a command center for Hamas.
Right, but of course Hamas still with the capability of firing rockets, and as we noted in the beginning of this broadcast an hour ago, still able to fire off rounds at central Israel, including here in Tel Aviv, where we heard the booms of the interceptions from the Iron Dome system.
And we saw those outgoing rockets heading your direction, Caleb. Earlier, that happened about an hour ago now. Those interceptions taking place in Ashkelon. We are seeing reports that bits of debris fell in an area around Ashkelon and struck what appears to be several vehicles, started a fire. Working to bring more information on that for any reports of injuries right now. MDA Magan Davidam says that they're still working on assessing the situation. For those rocket fires, we were able to tell at least one of the barrages, the earliest barrage in these evening hours, did appear to come from the northeast corner, from the direction and distance of Bet Hanun. That's significant because that is indicative that there are rocket launch sites still in northern Gaza, where the heaviest IDF airstrike and artillery activity has been targeting these launch sites specifically. Of course, they are numerous.
All right, Zach Anders there in Sderot. Thank you for that. And with us still, news correspondent Ariel Osran. We are joined by Professor Alon Tal. He's a former member of the Knesset for Benny Gantz's Blue and White Party. He's chair also of the Department of Public Policy at Tel Aviv University. And Alon, some significant news out of Gaza this evening. Zach mentioning this photo taken by IDF troops in what was the former parliament building or office. We're seeing it on the screen there. Of Gaza, and reports that Gaza has basically lost control of the northern part of the Strip. So we could be coming shortly to a key turning point in the battle east for the northern half of Gaza.
I think so. The question, of course, is that they have 5 different full battalions there, with Hamas doing them in the south. But it does seem that the IDF has taken a real chunk out of the manpower and the operational capacity. I just think we have to get ourselves away from this notion that the Shifa Hospital is some sort of a capture the flag model kind of,
or Berlin in World War II.
The tunnel network is enormous, it is vast, it's labyrinthal, and from what we know that people move around every night, the top leadership. And so, although we can be encouraged and impressed by the professionalism and the meticulousness of the IDF, I think it's a little bit early to start saying that the tide is completely turned.
Sure, of course. And of course, there is still the northern front. let's go to our correspondent Nicole Sadek, who's there right by the Israel-Gaza border. That front continues to be active, and unfortunately, as we mentioned, a civilian fatality today from that rocket incident yesterday, Nicole.
Yeah, Kalev, certainly an active scene up here, and we're actually hearing new reports from the IDF Chief of Staff, who was here in the north earlier today in Sfat, or Safed in English, which is not far behind me here in northern Israel. Did a security assessment with some of the troops here in the north and said that he's still maintaining a high level of security here in the north because he's preparing, he says in his words, to continue to make sure that any of the civilians, anyone of the residents who have evacuated, we're speaking about tens of thousands of residents within a 4-kilometer radius from the border who have been asked to evacuate. Now, 5 weeks into the start of the war, they still haven't been able to return home. And Jose Levy said he wants to make sure that when the residents do come back and do return to their homes, they feel safe. He says the residents will not be coming back here without that layer of security and safety. And so there's not much information about the plans that he approved, but action plans here in the north were approved, and it really all goes to show that the IDF is taking all of these threats and increased threats from Hezbollah out of southern Lebanon. They're taking those threats seriously. This new statement from the IDF Chief of Staff also comes after we heard from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu earlier today, also reiterating similar sentiments, stating that any of the firing that we're seeing from southern Lebanon is going to be met with a stronger fire from Israel, and that they're going to respond by any means necessary to eliminate the threat that we are seeing. As I said, it is an increased threat throughout the day. We continue to see mortar shelling, rockets fired, even alarms for different unmanned aerial vehicles in the area as well. And so this is what we've been seeing for the past several days, and it certainly seems to be picking up.
All right, Nicole Sadek there on Israel's northern frontier by the Lebanon border. Thank you for that. Now, the former Israeli Justice and Interior Minister Gideon Saar, who joined the Emergency Unity government last month as part of Benny Gantz's National Unity Party, and now sits in the Security Cabinet, did speak earlier today with R24 News. Here's what he had to say about this recent escalation in the north, and also the potential day after in Gaza once Hamas is defeated.
He decided in the Security Cabinet to concentrate on the southern front, on defeating Hamas, returning our hostages back home, and defeating Hamas, eliminating its governmental and military capabilities, and that's what we're doing over the last 5 weeks. We are ready in the north, and we are reacting to every provocation of Hezbollah. We act decisively, and we do what we have to do, but we don't have an intention to initiate a full-scale war in the north. Of course, it can happen, and we will be ready and prepared to do what we need to do if that will happen, but it is not our objective. I think we are, of course, thinking and dealing with this issue, but I think it's really too early to speak on the day after. We are right now in the middle of a war. It will continue for a while. We are decisive to meet our objectives, our goals, and this is the most important thing right now. About the Palestinian Authority, we have here some realistic questions. First of all, whether the PA, which is not very capable to control over its territory in Judea and Samaria, like Jenin, for example, how they can control Gaza Strip. It seems, first of all, just not so realistic. Second thing is the more severe because it's already poisoning the new generation. I think, speaking about the day after, we must think of a way how to build a new generation without this poison, without this hatred, without this beliefs to kill Jews and destruction of the Jewish state. And I'm not sure the Palestinian Authority is the right partner in order to do so, according to our experience with the Palestinian Authority over the last 30 years.
Well, certainly, you don't start making some valid points here about the Palestinian Authority. But of course, that does lead the question is who is going to manage at least the civil affairs of the Gaza Strip once this operation, or at least the military side of it, ends. And even Israel said it wants security control. It certainly doesn't want to manage the civil affairs of over 2 million Palestinians.
I think when we look at the options, assuming that we're not going to find a long list of volunteers from neighboring and friendly Arab countries to come in and help, the only realistic option is to give administrative authority to the Palestinian Authority in terms of running the day-to-day civilian functions, and for the IDF in the short term at least, in the long term, to be overseeing the security, much like we had an Area B in the West Bank. There's a model, it's not perfect, it's got its flaws, but it has worked now for many, many years, and we know how to make that work. Assuming the Palestinian Authority, I was in fact encouraged when I saw that Abu Mazen recently told the Americans, yes, I will step up and do that. And of course, I know illusions to me about the flaws of an
Why be rightly skeptical about that?
But nonetheless, it's the options are not great, but that may be the only one that's really available.
Well, that may be a position perhaps acceptable to the party that you're identified with, that of Benny Gantz, but certainly, and not even all its members, because we just heard from one Gideon Saar, who was a member of that current constellation or list, who was expressing extremely his reservations. But it's hard to imagine the government in its current constellation, even making even with all those reservations, coming to the position you just articulated.
Well, it's true. Gideon Saar comes from the right side of the political map. He's a rational person, and everything that it concerns them concerns me as well. But at the end of the day, the alternative is for Israel to reoccupy the Gaza Strip, and I don't think that anybody thinks that's a good idea.
There are some who do, but this one is an extremist. Exactly. I think it's in the country. Well, of course, all that has to come at the end of Israel's military operation, whose primary purpose, besides destroying Hamas or its military capability, is the freeing of the 239, at least 239 confirmed hostages being held in the Gaza Strip. Now, one of them is Alex Danzig. He's a 75-year-old historian who specializes in researching and teaching about the Holocaust, especially in Poland. He's been working for decades at the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial Museum in Jerusalem. It is a bitter irony, then, that on October 7th, he became one of the victims in the deadliest day in Jewish history since that Nazi era. He's not been seen or heard of since Hamas terrorists attacked kibbutz near Oz, and he's believed to have been taken hostage from there into Gaza. And joining us now is his son, Ben Danzig. And Ben, I know it's difficult. Take us back to the morning of October 7th, when you first understood what was happening down south in the near Oz and learning about your father's fate.
Hi everyone. To tell you the truth, I don't understand what's happening, and it's day 38. I don't understand up to now. Okay? Because the simple fact is that no Israeli force was there, to protect us. No airplanes, no aircraft, no tanks, no soldiers. So my point of view is really changed from day 1 or 2. Now it's day 38.
Right. Well, what did you hear, though, from when did you first learn about what was happening down south? And did you make efforts to contact your father? What happened on that day?
What happened on that day is that the Hamas attacked kibbutz Nir Oz in a way that it didn't attack no other kibbutz. There are kibbutzes also that suffer very, very much. But what happened in kibbutz Nir Oz was with the land, also walking the land as a farmer. But his most, his life factor was education, Holocaust, exchanging students in Yad Vashem. He started to do that, you know. He was the one that started to do that. He was the one that founded the organization that teaches how to guide in Poland and how to make the dialogue between the two cultures, really happen, through learning Polish mythology, connecting to, Jewish history, which is one of the ancient truths still remain. The Bible
Sure.
is still there.
Right, and your brother, I understand, made a trip to Poland and met with the president there and spoke about your father there.
Yeah, I think if you follow a little bit what happened in Poland with my father, you realize that there are really a lot of people that care, which is really nice to know. But my brother is doing an amazing job. He also accept the Polish president. He met leaders in Europe, trying to save my father's life. My father is 75 years old. He had a really serious heart attack 5 years ago. You know, my soul is dealing with his thoughts. What's going through his head. Day 38. And the tears that I have now in the morning is his thoughts.
Sure.
Is what he's thinking.
Ben, we're an international channel, as well as a local channel here in Israel. So I want to ask you, what's your message using this platform? What's your message both to here and to the world concerning your father and his fate?
First of all, my message to the world concerning my father, but it's just my message to the world. And my message to the world, people that concerning love and raising kids in a normal, quiet kind of environment, please wake up and realize that the war is now going to end if we are not united in a kind of a way, in a kind of a string, connecting, the people that still care about life. The second thing concerning my father is, of course, I want my father back in my life. I really miss him. And he's a great man. But I will tell you that, kibbutz Nirot, we have 80 people inside. We have babies inside. We have pregnant women. We have my father, my uncle, my teachers. Our whole community have been murdered, raped, and kidnapped in a very brutal way.
It's horrific to even think of, and as I said, one has to think back to the Holocaust, the subject your father certainly you studied, and
you just don't have a choice.
Right.
Yeah. Because my father dedicated his life to it. Exactly that. How to take one kind of idea, and just push it to the extent that it starts to kill people. That's what the Hamas is doing. That's what other countries that support Hamas is doing now. They're supporting evilness, supporting blackness, in the world, and really, I hope that there are few leaders in the world, that care about human life. Because I see a lot of leaders that care about power, cared about weapons, cared about killing, cared about starting wars, cared about oil, money, banks. I can continue 2 days now, but please wake up, please.
Right. All right. Ben Danzig, of course, most of all, we join your mourning for those friends you've lost, and wish the safe and sound return of your father, Alex. Thank you.
There's one musician that played in your channel, Eitan Haddad, from Kibbutz Be'eri.
something about him. Aydan Khanna.
Sure, so many people have been lost.
Yeah,
And
too much.
too much, and hopefully those that have been, who are still alive and who are being held prisoner in Gaza will get a safe return. Thank you, Ben Danzig, for joining us.
Thank you for speaking to me.
Always difficult, each one of these stories, but again, the Holocaust connection. This was a man, he was actually born after the Holocaust in Poland, but I believe he had a sister who's a survivor. Studied these atrocities, tried to then bridge a gap between Jews and Poles, which is why the personal interest of the Polish president was taken, and then he suffers this fate. It's almost unimaginable to think about.
And the fact that this week President Herzog presented a copy in Arabic of Mein Kampf that was found amongst the Hamas terrorists really suggests that these comparisons with the Nazis is not far-fetched. That's exactly what they wanted to do. That's the ideology which they embrace. It's not just anti-Israel, it's anti-Jewish.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I know. And another parallel is the fact that entire families, communities were destroyed. I mean, if we're looking at Nir Oz, it's one of the smaller border communities, but just about a third of the kibbutz was either kidnapped or murdered. And so you have, for instance, in Kfar Aza, the young families neighborhood, 15 young families lived there on the eve of October 7th. Only 2 families remained afterwards. And so these are entire families. There's an entire 3-generational family held hostage in Gaza, but also in these border communities, entire families erased. And given that the survivors of these communities have relocated, it is not sure if these communities will even return. And so the current situation right now in these border communities, they look like a war zone with these communities that were erased, and some may not return because of the lack of sense of safety, even regardless of the outcome of the war.
Although we don't know where the discussions are really at in terms of a possible hostage deal. There were reports of Hamas saying they've broken off, but we did hear Prime Minister Netanyahu say in the interviews with American television he's open to the idea within certain parameters. How do you see that? What should be the parameters for some kind of hostage deal that this government possibly could make, even in the coming days?
Well, the typical response is, of course, these are details we shouldn't talk about, but what's clear is that Israel's going to have to return a lot of other prisoners. The Gilad Shalit prisoner exchange, 1,000 prisoners for one, created a precedent and expectations that even if we change that equation, the fact that there have been committees that were created to discuss how you negotiate it, and they're always, I should put it, dismissed in the actual dynamics of the situation. But I can't imagine. I was today at the hostage square, which is the square in front of the Israel Museum, which has been renamed, meeting with some of the families there, and their ordeal is so acute. And the amount of support they have, I think that there would be strong public support to do a massive exchange in order to get back all of their...
Right, and we don't know in any way what conditions this would fall under. We have to say that one of the conditions that's been floated or people have discussed is allowing some of the leaders of Hamas to escape from the Gaza Strip, a bitter pill to swallow, in return for the hostage being freed. And that is something, of course, even beyond the freeing of prisoners that are being held currently in Israeli jails. Professor Alon Tal, Ariel Osran, stay with us. We are going out for a brief break. We still expect the nightly briefing of Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, the IDF spokesperson, within the coming half hour. We'll bring you that live as it happens. But stay with us. We'll be back in just a few minutes with more of our special coverage, Day 38, Israel's war against Hamas.
Israel is in a state of war. Families completely gunned down in their beds. We have no idea where is she as our soldiers are fighting on the front line, but the general perception is something that certainly needs to be fought as well.
Welcome back to this special broadcast on I-24 News. We're going to look at one of the international reactions to events here, and it's a particularly upsetting one coming after that segment we just had, speaking of the son of one of the hostages being held in Gaza. Now, the Swedish teen Greta Thunberg gained global fame as a climate activist, but now she's leveraging that prominence to speak out on the Gaza conflict, taking a notably one-sided approach. Now, last week she tweeted a photo featuring her and other activists holding signs saying "Free Palestine" and "Stand with Gaza," but there was not a word about Israeli citizens or hostages. And her original tweet included in the photo, for some reason, a toy octopus. And when Talkback has pointed out, the image of an octopus is also used in anti-Semitic imagery to suggest Jewish power. She retweeted the picture without it. Yesterday, Thunberg spoke at a climate change rally in Amsterdam, but again, used that platform to advocate on the Israel-Hamas conflict, again, not mentioning Israeli civilians or hostages, and then this happened.
People on the front lines of the climate crisis have been experiencing the first-hand consequences of it for decades now, and they have been sounding the alarm, but we have not been listening. The people in power have not been listening.
Alon Tal, for those who don't know, along with being a former Knesset member and a professor at Tel Aviv University, you are one of the leading founders of the environmental movement in Israel. Some might say the key figure in the founding of the environmental movement. It's obviously an issue you're deeply connected with. I just want to get your reaction to Greta Thunberg using her platform to speak out, really advocating, taking a side in this conflict, the side, I have to say, of Hamas. And of course, clearly upsetting some individuals like that gentleman who rushed the stage. They said, I came here to hear about the climate, not to hear your political statements.
And clearly upsetting me as well. I immediately tweeted that we're going to have to find other heroes. Look, I would like to say that Greta Thunberg's superficial and very, very ignorant response is disappointing. But that's not strong enough. It's intolerable because for 20 years, the environmental movement has been fighting a battle of information or disinformation on the climate front, where largely the oil industry has been paying to obfuscate this issue and create skepticism about the existence of a climate crisis. So our reliability is so critical. And when Greta Thunberg steps forward, given her stature as maybe the most important global figure that speaks on behalf of the climate,
certainly the most visible,
and takes a position which is really so bottom of complex issues at best. Do you think Hamas represent human rights and freedom? Think again. So I think that we're all extremely angry at Greta Thunberg, who has, like you said, abused her stature, and I think harmed the global effort to create some sort of climate stability, because certainly the many people who would rather us not change the nature of our economy, move to a low carbon economy, and move forward, are going to take advantage of her now questionable reliability and play against the climate movement.
All right, just again, reiterate, this is not necessarily criticism of somebody expressing sympathy for these civilians in the Gaza Strip, but the fact that she does so as we've taken a one-sided approach, no mention of the hostages, no mention of Israeli civilians.
She said, well, I'm absolutely opposed to anti-Semitism, but you cannot identify with the Hamas at this stage and not see this as identifying with an organization whose stated goal is to kill Jews and eliminate Israel.
All right, certainly, environmentalists like yourself would get passionate about this issue, so you have a right to be angry and concerned about her statements. Now, the rocket fire that we've seen in the north of Israel did not prevent the funeral today in the town of Kiryat Shmona of IDF Reserve's Master Sergeant Sergei Shmerkin, who was killed this weekend in the Gaza Strip. One of the 44 soldiers who have been killed in the fighting, specifically inside the Gaza Strip in combat. Here's what his girlfriend May had to say at that funeral today in Kiryat Shmona.
I cannot comprehend, and my heart refuses to believe that this is our new reality. It's hardly been 2 weeks since I've sent you a letter when you were still fighting for us, my hero. And now I write you again, a letter which is an eternal memory. And today is also the day that the angel within you is spreading its wings and flies to the sky. I want to start by thanking our Father in heaven for the privilege of loving you and feel complete next to you in the last years of your life, which are also the most beautiful years of my life.
Well, maybe I'm reviewing, of course, those of the others who have fallen bravely back the Gaza Strip. And speaking within Gaza, from the other side, there are some news and developments out tonight, Ariel.
Right, so Al Jazeera airing audio recording shared with them by Hamas's military spokesperson. Al Jazeera, obviously the platform for Hamas and all their messaging moving out. And so some key points coming out from Abu Ubaida's speech, saying that the war waged by Israeli leaders is to eliminate or escape their resounding defeat in October 7th. Not a surprise there. Also saying, now this is interesting regarding the videos and statements that Hamas has lost control over the Gaza Strip. So Abu Ubaida saying here that trusting the resistance does not exempt anyone. And that's key. I mean, you could say that's a clear statement, natural statement, but no. They feel that their support from the Palestinian street is waning, and so he's clarifying here,
even within the Gaza Strip.
And so he's saying here that no one is exempt from supporting the Palestinian resistance, as they call themselves. And also he's moving forward in some psychological warfare regarding what the terms were for a hostage deal. Didn't work out, truce that. I don't think there's any point in diving specifically into those details, because it's another part of Hamas's psychological warfare that they've been engaged in, not just since October 7th, but October 7th, given that they have Israeli hostages, they're using this obviously as the underbelly of Israeli society. And so the military spokesperson Abu Ubaida trying on the one hand to save face outwards.
Well, we have now Israel's military spokesperson is now starting to speak. Let's take a listen.
The fighting in Gaza is ongoing. Ground and armored forces continue to strike military infrastructures in the Shati refugee camp. Today they arrived at the DC hospital. I was joined by international correspondents. We exposed the terror infrastructure in the hospital. Now suspicion that in the hospital, some of the hostages were kept for some of the time. Israeli hostages were at the Rantisi hospital that is under investigation. We know this also based on intelligence that validates this. The world needs to know what happens in the Gaza hospitals and work against the war crimes of the Hamas ISIS. I will now show the evidence
from Gaza, where I joined the operation inside the Rantisi Children's Hospital. I went to the hospital with a video camera and personally documented more concrete evidence. The concrete evidence are that Hamas uses hospitals and as an instrument of war. Underneath the hospital, in the basement, we found a Hamas command and control center, suicide bomb vests, grenades, AK-47 assault rifles, explosive devices, RPGs and other weapons, computers, money, etc. And we also found signs that indicate that Hamas held hostages here. This is currently under our investigation, but we also have intelligence that verifies it. Additionally, we found evidence that Hamas terrorists came back from the massacre on October 7th to this hospital, among others, after butchering Israelis in their homes, executing the innocent, murdering entire families, burning babies, burning young women alive, and uses this children's hospital Rantisi to hide. Hamas hides in hospitals. Today, we will expose this to the world. For the last week, we have been conducting an effort to safely evacuate the patient being treated there, and in other hospitals as well. Israel helped the hospital manager evacuate the Gazan patient to a safer hospital. Yesterday, we were informed by the hospital that the last 18 patients in the Rantisi hospital had safely evacuated to a safer hospital. This is because our war is against Hamas, not against the people in Gaza, especially not the sick, wounded, or the women, or the children. Our war is against Hamas, who uses them as human shields. I will now share the raw footage that we filmed a few hours ago, proving that Hamas systematically runs its terror machine under hospitals in Gaza. This is the Rantisi hospital. Next to the complex, there is a school, but also there is a terrorist. One of the head of the terrorists is one of the terrorists from the naval commando. He's the commander of the naval commando unit of Hamas. And this complex is next to the hospital Rantisi. I'm talking about yards, short yards. What we found, and you will see in the video, that there is a tunnel next to the terrorist building. We have solar panels above it, next to the school, and next to the hospital. We're now trying to indicate the route to the tunnel to the hospital. We're investigating right now with our engineering team, but we have evidence that this tunnel goes to this direction. In the hospital, in the building that's located in red, we've revealed Hamas infrastructure in the basement. We're still under operation that searches other floors in the building, and this operation is still conducting. I will show the video right now. This is the area where the tunnel is being done, next to the school, next to the hospital. They are building those tunnels specifically next to this sensitive location. A robot
to show you. Click. This is the tunnel. Okay, now this is Rantisi Hospital in the basement, in the building I've shown you. Hamas have created a location inside the hospital who will be disconnected from the rest of the hospital. Inside this room, there is an armory with grenades, vests, bombs, RPGs. In a basement, it was supposed to be a basement for children to hide in. Hamas took all this area under his control and conducted his war against Israelis from this hospital. These are serious gear that even take a risk for the patients inside the hospital. These are explosive, these are bomb vests that you see in the film here. For terrorists to hold a bomb vest on them in a children's hospital, next to hostages, as we presume. Click. Stop. This is a motorcycle, like you have seen in the day of the 7th of October. It also has a bullet inside it, and underneath it is something that we think that is part of a hostage setup. Head branch. Click. They brought the motorcycle inside the basement with the hostage presumed. This basement also leads to a place where we presume signs of indication that hostages were being held. On this chair, we saw a rope, a chair, a clothes, and a pot of the health organization who gives money to this hospital. This is a war crime, and a baby bottle above it. This is in the basement. No babies should be in the basement. This is a war crime. This is a crime against humanity. And we also saw an improvised toilets nearby. You don't build an improvised toilets in the basement unless you want to build an infrastructure to hold hostages. We also find some baby stuff over there, and we're still investigating everything. We brought our forensic teams. They're on the way to the hospital to investigate all the evidence that we have. They built a small kitchen next to a room that was hiding. This room got a ventilation from the outside, an improvised ventilation. And we assume that this area and this room were either for terrorists staying there or for terrorists and hostages. And we will show you the signs that indicate that. Nobody put curtains behind a wall. Why do you put curtains when there are no windows? Unless you want to film something. Unless you want to create a place that nobody knows whether it's in the basement or other place. And there is this list with days, marks the days from the 7th of October, and has the name that Hamas gave to the Operation of Al-Aqsa, of the Mosque of Al-Aqsa. Has the dates, the numbers of the the last hospital like this in Gaza. And the world should know that that's a crime, that's a war crime, that's a crime against humanity, that's against international law. Who gives money to these hospitals? Who shares this hospital and embraces this hospital is helping Hamas effort. We're trying to shift the Gaza to a safe area in the south and reveal those hospitals as terror machine. And the world should know it, and the world should not forget those crimes against humanity done to Israel. We will free our hostages from Gaza and free Gaza from Hamas for the sake of the people of Israel, for the people of Gaza as well, and the world. Questions?
תת-אלוף הגרי, מפקד מחדשות 14, אנחנו יודעים שכוחות צה"ל פועלים ברוב hospitals, תשתיות הטרור, יש תוכניות פעולה בתוך
plans to operate inside the hospitals after what you just revealed. I was just with the fighters. I don't remember since all my days in service in 30 years such strength. הייתי שיירות של טנקים of the IDF, I saw tanks, I saw the best fighters of the state of Israel, reservists, special forces. I went with them into the hospital. We operated inside the hospital. We will operate against terror, to expose terror, to dismantle Hamas, to bring our hostages back home in any way possible, operational or intelligence, and bring about safe borders for the state of Israel.
We have just heard a briefing from the IDF spokesperson, Admiral Daniel Hagari. A very different one from the ones he's given previously. This one was given mostly in English, and it focused on one particular topic, the way that one of the hospitals of the Gaza Strip, the Raitisi Hospital in North Gaza, has been used both as a center for Hamas terror operations, but providing pretty damning proof that that hospital was used as a prison, I would say, for some of the hostages, including even apparently some of the infants, as were taken hostage by Hamas on October 7th. Ariel, an extraordinary briefing, I thought, from Daniel Hagari.
And a briefing that really undermines all the claims that Hamas is not using hospitals. This is irrefutable proof that Hamas is using not only humans as shields, but the most sensitive civilian institutions as its lifeline. And this is, besides being abhorrent, this is something that should be seen by the world. And you know, these nightly pressers that Hagari gives are Israel's best way to combat these claims that don't only discredit what Israel is doing, but gives proof to those claiming that what Israel is doing to try and uproot Hamas, not only from Gaza population, but also from Gaza key institutions, sensitive institutions like hospitals.
A lot of word about whether this will have impact on the international community and that diplomatic window that we've been hearing about.
I think that Israel has to provide a very clear message, and that is, if democracies are unable to win the wars that our enemies started, we're finished. And hopefully, when the great, decent majority of, at least of Western countries and the countries that matter, take a look at the means to do this, they'll understand that Israel has no choice. And with 200,000 Israelis waiting to go home, I think this kind of message is important. And mostly we have to explain that if Israel fails, then the next time we're going to, Hamas has said it before, we're just the start.
Briefly, some breaking news about a hostage, but in a different hostage, held in a different theater, but certainly with connections to Israel and connections to the conflict in Gaza.
Right, we're talking about a video released of Israeli-Russian researcher Elizabeth Turkov. She was last known to be kidnapped by Hezbollah, that's a pro-Iranian Shiite militia in Iran. There is no information about her whereabouts in the video. Which is a proof of life. She talks about her background, obviously, and many of the things that she says is clearly under coercion. And she also talks about the war in Gaza, similar to the propaganda videos that Hamas has been releasing of the hostages. Again, like in all these videos, the only silver lining is that this is a proof of life.
Right, because she does reference the situation in Gaza, so clearly it is a current issue. We have followed that story and spoke with her sister here, and clearly this is connected. Perhaps a sign of desperation of the forces in the Gaza Strip that after so many months they've resorted to, as you said, you created this video. Clearly, the
only effective weapon they have is psychological warfare, unfortunately.
All right, Ariel Saran, Professor Alotal, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us. We had a very, as I said before, a very dramatic presentation by the IDF spokesperson, providing proof of the way in which hospitals in the Gaza Strip are used as terror centers, and at least one used as to house Israeli hostages being held in Gaza. We're going out now on this program, but stay with us. We'll continue our coverage here on I-24 News of Israel's war against Hamas.
Made for me, a unique concept in Israel. Custom-made men's fashion to your measurements. Made for me, designer of all your events. Schedule your appointment at www.madeforme.co.il. Made for me, official dresser of I-24 News.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Israel is in a state of war. Families completely gunned down in their beds. We have no idea where he stands. Our soldiers are fighting on the front lines, but the general perception is something that certainly needs to be fought as well.
Esta semana en News 24, Israel bajo ataque. News 24 en español trae el análisis y la información de los acontecimientos de la guerra de Espadas de Hierro.
Entrevistas exclusivas de reportes desde la zona de guerra. La reacción de los países hispanoparlantes.
News 24, el único medio en español que te mantiene informado y conectado con la comunidad latina en Israel. News 24, únicamente en I-24 News.
by 24 News' ongoing coverage of Israel at war on RL-11 Warman. We're now 38 days into that war, and we're going to open by looking at this image. Israeli troops holding up the flag in the heart of Hamas's Legislative Council building as the IDF cuts ever deeper into the terrorist fortresses. Fighting is fierce and dirty. This video captures the moment Hamas terrorists fired heavy weapons at Israeli troops from inside the Al-Quds hospital in Gaza City. It's an obvious violation of international laws. The IDF says that terror cell has been eliminated. This is all coming as the IDF is surrounding Gaza City's largest hospital at Shifa. It's built on top of Hamas's underground command bunkers. According to the United Nations, about half of the patients and healthcare workers have left, but hundreds remain inside. The EU has condemned Hamas for using hospitals and using civilians as human shields. Moving on to the northern front, identified now a 56-year-old electrical engineer died after yesterday's attack by Hezbollah in northern Israel. Shalom Aboudi is the third Israeli civilian to be killed by that group since October 7th. And we are going to take a look now on the southern border where our correspondent Zach Andrews is standing by. Zach, it's good to have you with us. We've been hearing so much in the last few days about the fighting taking place around Shifa Hospital, moving ever closer to Hamas's underground command center. Give us the latest from that operation right now.
Well, within the last few hours, Defense Secretary Gallant claims that Hamas has lost complete control over the Gaza Strip, that their forces have fallen apart. That speaks to the level of activity that we've seen in the northern Gaza Strip and Gaza City, where the IDF has rolled through many streets where there's been fighting and gotten closer and closer to Shifa Hospital, where there's been more resistance, perhaps speaking to Hamas's intent to defend that command center underneath the hospital. Now, in the last 24 hours, the the European Union has stressed that and passed a resolution that condemning Hamas for using these hospitals throughout the Gaza Strip as areas of operation, using the hospitals as points where they fire off, as the video has shown, we've shown throughout the day, firing off RPGs from locations around the hospitals and targeting IDF troops.
And do you have any inclination or indication, I should say, of just how extensive the IDF ground operations have been, how far they've penetrated, and ultimately how much is left to do in the northern part of Gaza?
Well, as you spoke to just a moment ago with that image of the troops inside the Parliament building, that's significant because this Parliament building is located several blocks away from Shifa Hospital. You see in that photo that they're posing with the Israeli flag. They're side by side. They look rather comfortable. They don't look like they're under fire. That appears to show that the area surrounding the hospital is within the IDF's scope of control, that they have operational security in many of these places. Of course, you get close to the hospital and the fighting can stop.
Well, thank you very much, Zach. We'll be back with you as the situation develops on the ground. But we did recently just have that briefing from the IDF, and we're going to take you to a quick clip of that so you can hear the latest from them directly.
I just got back from Gaza, where I joined an operation inside the Rantisi Children's Hospital. I went to the hospital with a video camera and personally documented more concrete evidence. The concrete evidence are that Hamas uses hospitals as an instrument of war. Underneath the hospital, in the basement, we found a Hamas command and control center, suicide bomb vests, grenades, AK-47 assault rifles, explosive devices, RPGs and other weapons, computers, money, etc. And we also found signs that indicate that Hamas held hostages here. This is currently under our investigation, but we also have intelligence that verifies it. Additionally, we found evidence that Hamas terrorists came back from the massacre on October 7th to this hospital, among others, after butchering Israelis in their homes, executing the innocent, murdering entire families, Today, we will expose this to the world. For the last week, we have been conducting an effort to safely evacuate the patient being treated there and in other hospitals as well. Israel helped the hospital manager evacuate the Gazan patient to a safer hospital. Yesterday, we were informed by the hospital that the last 18 patients in the Rantisi hospital have safely evacuated to a safer hospital. This is because our war is against the people in Gaza, especially not the sick, wounded, or the women, or the children. Our war is against Hamas, who uses them as human shields.
And to discuss this further, we are joined in studio by Major General Eitan Donban, former coordinator of government activities in the Palestinian territories, the IDF. Thank you very much for being with us. Now, Israel has been showing recordings from phones, showing Hamas's use of human shields, showing them not letting people evacuate. This is the first time we have video evidence of them doing direct violations of international law in Oslo. Does this actually change anything on the ground or in the international arena?
I think it just strengthens what's going in the ground, because on the ground we complete to surround the north part of Gaza. It's not under control of Hamas, not civil, and not also on creating any kind of being on the ground and attacking back. We are not arrogant army. We are an army that is under fighting. We didn't complete yet the mission. It will take weeks, even in the north part of Gaza. There is a lot of area while the underground tunnels should be under a step-by-step in order to destroy what is going down there. But on a public, up on the ground, you see that Israel strength, its claims and legitimation. What we said, that hospitals are used as a headquarters, as a place of creating terror, violence, of hiding themselves after what they butchered families on the 7th of October. And I think that this evening is combination of showing the strength of the IDF in Gaza. And I say again, we are not arrogant army. We have to continue to be careful and just to bring the evidence to the people in the world to show them what is in the hospital and the strength that Israeli activities in moving hospitals to the south, bringing field hospitals from all over the world, and giving a real medical treatment to those who are needing on area while it will be done by professional crews that can work, not can be under threat from the Hamas, what and how to do. And also, we have in the same time to complete the mission. It's a war. Hamas will not be anymore in Gaza, not controlling and not being a strong military power, because this is the state of Hamas. And the state of Hamas must be exploited by Israel after what they done in the 7th of October. And on the other end, it will take time, it will take weeks, but I raise that on the other end we have to start to move ahead, what we call the day after, and to see how we succeed to supply. The winter is on the door now. We have to bring the best thing we can do under the winter time to the population, but we have to keep the safe of our soldiers, of our units, to kill the terrorists, to kill the leadership. And you see today one very important symbol, the parliament of Hamas, that has been under Israeli soldiers. And I say again, it's not arrogant, it's a war, and we have to continue step by step and to do it professionally, to be careful, to work on it together, combination between air force, ground force, tanks, engineering, infantry together, and to continue to move step by step to complete this mission. What will be with the next station, probably Khan Yunis. This is the place that I assess that nowadays, that Sinwar and his body and his people, his staff, the main leadership of Hamas is there, and we have to do it. But I say again, we have to make it in very specific way,
well, because our correspondent Nicole Sedek is standing by there in northern Israel. This has been escalating ever more every single day on the northern front. Rockets reaching as far as Haifa in some cases, just outside on the outskirts. Ultimately, what is the current situation there as things are heating up in the north?
Well, the IDF Chief of Staff, Herzi Halevi, says that they are preparing plans to restore the security situation here in the north because we continue to see it escalate. Earlier today, Herzi Halevi was in Sfat, or Safed in English, which is not far from me, where I am here in northern Israel near the border with Lebanon. And in that security, that situational assessment, the IDF Chief of Staff said that they are looking and preparing active plans, and they also saying that the Northern Command is still going to be on high alert because in order for all of the residents who have evacuated, the tens of thousands of residents who have all evacuated from that 4-kilometer radius around the northern border, in Halevi's words, if they've evacuated, they need to feel safe when they come back. And he said the IDF is going to work and make sure that they are in a safe situation and that it is safe for them to move back whenever the time is. So it seems that the IDF is certainly planning to continue to attack Hezbollah hard as Hezbollah continues to fire rockets, continues to fire missiles, mortars, everything towards this northern area. Even earlier today, the IDF confirming that the various different locations in the north, they were terrorists firing at several locations in the north, and the IDF responded to all of those incidents with artillery fire towards those Hezbollah terrorists. The IDF also stating that one of their tanks struck a terror cell that was preparing to launch some anti-tank guided missiles towards northern Israel. So we are seeing an increased level of activity, but from what the IDF is saying, they're saying they're monitoring it clearly, and they're going to make sure that it will not continue from everything that we have seen, because as I said, the residents right now, they might not be here, it might be empty, but at some point they need to return. And if we continue to see this tit-for-tat firing, we continue to see mortars, shelling, rockets fired to these northern communities, the residents are not going to move back, and the IDF knows that, and so they say that they will make sure that they are safe.
Absolutely, thank you very much, Nicole. The question of securing that northern border is going to hanging over security forces going forward. It's actually all the more pressing because back in May, it was believed that one force rehearsed an assault on northern Israel, storming the border fence and a mock seizure of an IDF outpost. That scenario sounds very familiar. It's exactly what Hamas's elite nuclear unit did last month in the south of Israel. So what exactly is the Radwan unit? It still surprised the IDF in the north amid this escalating cross-border fire. Well, Middle East correspondent Ira Saran has more.
Hamas's October 7th onslaught on southern Israel caught the country completely by surprise. Well, maybe not entirely, since the IDF had been preparing for such a scenario, just not from Gaza. In fact, we had known about it for years.
I say to the fighters of the Islamic resistance, be prepared for the day when war is imposed on Lebanon, and the leadership of the resistance may ask you to conquer the Galilee.
The elite commando force tasked with this mission, the Radwan unit, named after the late leader of Hezbollah's military wing, Imad Muniyah, Radwan, and with 5,000 highly trained fighters. The main mission of the Radwan unit is to infiltrate into Israeli territory and conquer towns or bases in the Galilee.
The Radwan force is considered Hezbollah's most elite unit. It is well trained in urban and guerrilla warfare, given its extensive experience in fighting terrorism.
Back in 2014, Lebanon's pro-Hezbollah El Mayadeen TV station aired a breakdown of Radwan's attack strategy, copied almost exactly by Hamas last month in its rampage in the south. It begins with a massive opening rocket barrage. Then, the elite forces 5 battalions storm the border, each designated with taking control over a different area of Israel's north. The goal to seize the territory for as long as possible, while killing as many Israelis, soldiers, and civilians as they can. And following Hamas's success, Hezbollah's escalating cross-border attacks, including striking the border and creating gaps along the fence, has Israel concerned.
Hezbollah is dragging Lebanon into a war. That might happen. It is making mistakes. And who makes these mistakes? Those who will pay the price
pumasok na pala yung tunnel sa Sharifa. Yung isang ano. Pero may palatandaan na yung hostages ipinasok doon kasi may mga ano. May battle pa ng
Pay attention to what's happening on the ground, not what we are saying, Nasrallah suggested in his speech. And the situation on the ground is indeed slowly but gradually escalating.
And for more on this, we are going to return to studio where Major General Eitan Donbas is still with us. Eitan, we were just talking about the Red One force. They are more or less the counterparts to the Nukba force that committed the October 7 atrocities. Is there any world you can see where this war ends and they're still on the northern border and people are able to return to their homes there?
No, the answer is very clear.
Sino yung Kajima?
First of all, the government of Israel, the war cabinet, has to add to their goal the meaning that the day after, one of the main purpose or the main goals is to change the situation in the north border, bring the people.
Kilala ko yata yung sinasabi ng Tajima. Yan yung Pinay, di ba?
And of course, after what
yun pala eh.
I think it is now missing from this goal.
Siyempre, titanong ko kung Arab ba yan o Israeli o ano.
In my opinion, the escalation in the north is still under control by both sides. I mean, both sides are fighting among the border, among escalation that is climbing up. But in my opinion, Hezbollah is looking what happened in the south. There is a deterrence from what they saw in the picture in Gaza. There is a deterrence from reminding what memories from 2006 in the south in Lebanon. And above all, I think, Iranian calculation, whether they are going not to lose, but a deep cut to the readiness of the proxies of
Asawa ba yun, mahal? Hindi naman anal sa Pinas.
So I think there is how we are going to solve it or to achieve this goal. It is between military to political activities. In political activities, there will be a lot of Israeli family. There is the one
Sarin mayabang yan, mahal. Yung kaibigan mo pala.
The decision of the United Nations about making kind of moving the Hezbollah, and it was not respected after years. There is opportunity that will be under agreement or by such escalation that will raise up but keep red lines not to come to a war because we will be here. But the price that Lebanon, Hezbollah, Iran will pay will be very high, and the threatened issue is the United States. In my opinion, the 300 main obstacles of United States. First, in Gaza, humanitarian issue, there is a kind of a process. Secondly,
Paano nyo nalaman ng ano mo?
to keep them. The third, and the most important for the United States, that the reason for the deep involvement, what's going here, is to prevent a war in the north, because there is already in the United States, in Iraq and Syria, it can bring them 1 year before the election in the United States, and they give Israel
Interesado. Mahal, bilisan mo na interesado sa'yo, nililigawan ka.
I think the chances to solve it under
Hayop ka eh, pati tataliyak ka pa.
a way of Iran calculation about loss of price for what's going in the area will move it to kind of achieve. But your last question was whether there is a chance to achieve. The answer is well, yes, but it will take a lot of money. Israel changed 130 degrees the meaning of continue to hold the country's safety. And we are going to face a very
I-break mo na si ano. I-break mo na yan si Edward. Wala kang patutunan.
That was under attack on October 7th. Hamas had planned to extend as far away as the West Bank. Our senior defense correspondent Jonathan Reagan has the details.
Slowly but decisively, the IDF is taking over more and more of the northern Gaza Strip. Every movement is dangerous, as explosive tunnels can appear in every step, and terrorists can still pop up from the ground. As the forces push forward, they once again find evidence of civilian areas being used by terrorist purposes, sometimes using their own homes and families as shields.
In the home of the Northern Brigade ammunition chief of the Islamic Jihad, we found plenty of ammunition, military vests, military uniform, along with images of the leaders of the Iranian Axis.
As opposed to the terrorists, Israel is hoping to minimize civilian casualties. That is why fuel is provided by IDF
Hindi, at
soldiers
saka
to
kung hindi
the
naman niya
Shifa
girlfriend si
despite the
Christina, di magsabi ka muna.
concerns
Si Christina rin siguro, posible naman hindi nagtatanong yung kay Christina.
It's also the reason behind the daily safe passage corridors, allowing Gazans to head south and flee from the current fighting area.
The road is open. The Israeli troops were standing on the side, but the road itself is open. On Sarah Khadim Street, the road is clear.
As the fighting now wages in the strip, the plans Hamas had for the fighting within Israeli territory are now revealed. According to the Washington Post, some of the militants carried enough food, ammunition, and equipment to allow them to head deep into Israel, much deeper than they eventually did. According to the report, it was not only major Israeli cities they were after, but possibly wanted to reach the West Bank, thus uniting the two Palestinian fronts in what would have been a major propaganda victory. It was a very ambitious plan, which the entire Israeli security establishment simply missed.
Alert na pala si Tajima.
We don't believe that it might happen, or we don't want to believe. We find all the explanations, the excuses, in order to explain ourselves that this is not true.
Once again, Israel learned the hard way that the plans and capabilities of the other side should be taken seriously. Israeli mobilization may have stopped the plan of combining the fronts, but the
matanong kita, in case na wala naman sila ni Christina at si Christina nagsasabi na wala silang relasyon. Tapos, seryoso yan. Di ba bahay ka, sasamahan ka sa bahay, sasama ka sa buhay niya. Kay Edward ka, okay din sa pulis.
Once Hamas is broken in Gaza, is there going to be a way to root them out of the West Bank as well?
I think first of all that Hamas is under a process to be broken in Gaza. They lost a lot, but still the mission is not completed. And we have all the time to put it in our minds. We have a lot to fight. What you brought in, I don't know whether it's really right that the Hamas plan to connect itself to the West Bank, but it is something that Hamas has seen since May 21, if you remember. They decided of a new strategic. They went for it almost, in my opinion, estimation, they went for it more than 10 years. Under combination together with Hezbollah and Iranian data that was put inside and helped them to translate it from plans to reality what they did. Hamas went inside Israel by, I can estimate, they in some places,
Pero guwapo.
few places, they were succeeding in 1 or 2 or 3, it was enough for them, but they succeeded in all places they entered to Israel. I think they were
Christian?
very close to the well, to the inside the country, like Beersheba or other places that could come. They were on the way, but it shows you
Anong
that
ranko niya?
Hamas is looking forward in this operation to be considered as the main power for the Palestinians.
And we're going to continue this in a brief moment, but first we're going to a quick break. When we get back, more discussion, more topics.
Israel is in a state of war. Families completely gunned down in their beds. We have no idea where she is. Our soldiers are fighting on the front line. The general perception is something that certainly needs to be fought as well.
Wala siyang picture. Paano siya nag-chat sa'yo? Paano niya nalaman account mo? Eh di ba, tinanong mo kung kanina niya, paano kanya chinat? Saan siya nag-chat sa'yo? O di ibig sabihin, may nagbigay sa'yo ng number mo. Kaya nga. Paano kanya na diba? Interesado.
Esta semana en los 24 Israel bajo ataque. Y el 24 en español trae el análisis y la información de los acontecimientos de la guerra Espadas de Hierro.
Matagal na kayo mahal eh. Dalawang taon na kayo, ganyan pa rin ang ano.
El 24, el único medio en español que te mantiene informado y conectado con la comunidad latina en Israel. Y el 24, únicamente en I24 News.
Parang mahirap mo rin kasing itanong mahal dahil para mo siyang pinapapili, anak ko ikaw. Eh syempre, pipiliin ng mga anak.
Thank you for staying with us. We're going to return to our discussion from the studio with Major General Eitan Dangot. I want to continue roughly where we left off, because we have been discussing what the day after in Gaza might look like. And not even the day after, but during the military operation. Israel is progressing with but it's not just the north. Hamas is going to be moving people to Khan Yunis, to the south of Gaza, and everything in between. Ultimately, even taking northern Gaza doesn't break Hamas. What comes next?
We even been declaring that from the beginning. I think IDF and the war cabinet of Israel declared that these goals will be achieved and it will take months or I may tell you even years. But there is stages. I think the first stage now, when you see the picture of the Hamas parliament tonight, when you see what's going in the hospitals, you see that Israel succeed to move up all Hamas forces from north part of Gaza, not the underground. It means that this is a part of the mission. One thing is clear, Hamas cannot return back now to be an entity in Gaza. So when what you ask is what will be, it will be together two processes. One is the fact that the IDF will continue to fight, destroy, to kill Hamas terrorists, Hamas negotiate, Hamas civilian symbols of the authorities. Secondly, it will have to start, and in my opinion, it will start already, the basic of humanitarian support to the population on the south. It will have to be together. One principle, Israel will continue to control the security situation in Gaza and will find itself fighting everywhere. If you compare it to what happened on the West Bank from 2003 to 2007, it took Israel to complete the big operation we made and to fight against Jihad Islamic and Hamas units in the south part of the West Bank. So we have to be patient. Who will be the players in this fight? In my opinion, to build civil control, civil life, you need like a modular system. First of all, we have to be a system by the international movements like Red Cross, UNRWA. Those will come. Secondly, we will have the roof of some in key countries, especially Egypt, by being the station of entering the phase for this population. The situation in some places we find we have to fulfill some missions. The next part will be like a committee that will, this is my own estimation, it's not a government order.
I want to jump in now because we're still talking about with this discussion what happens in the semi-distant future. There's still the problem of Hamas on the ground still being a very strong.
But Hamas will move to be a guerrilla.
Wala siyang work.
Not anymore to be the controller of Gaza. What you see the picture now, even now, the statement by the spokesman and the others, it will be lower and lower, and it will be step by step. Hamas will not decide for Gaza. Hamas will not be a card for playing for the future or for the people who are living in Gaza. That will be as long as Israel beat Hamas.
Oo, at saka sa tagal yun na yan. Mga iba nga dito, pag mga kahit ilang mas lang sila, naglilipin na talaga, di ba?
After or during this war.
I want to bring in another angle of discussion here. Israel has made an effort to show maximum restraint in this war so far, minimizing collateral damage despite fighting in some of the densest urban sprawl on Earth. Despite these efforts,
Magkaiba naman kasi ang sitwasyon yung mga araw na din ang papa niya, si Edward Free siya.
Threatens Israel's military goals. But in a war,
Open naman siya, open namin sindihan sa inyo.
Limits just what is permitted. The EU has finally now released a
Dito siya matutulog.
use of human shields, but still equivocating to demonize Israel.
We condemn the use of Hamas as hospitals and people as human shields, and on the other hand, we ask Israel for maximum restraint and targeting in order to avoid human casualties.
And for more on this, we are joined in studio now as well by Daniel Pomeranz, CEO of Reality Check, and a legal expert, particularly in international law. It's good to have you in here with us, Daniel.
Thank you.
The big question everyone's thrown around this entire war is proportionality. What is a proportional response to an enemy that burns children alive? I want to discuss just what Israel has done so far and what they could be doing under international law.
Yeah, people throw around that word and they don't really understand what it means. I mean, does it mean that Israel should burn alive 40 children also and then call it a day? Clearly not. So what does it mean? And the answer is that it's not a matter of opinion. It's defined in a number of places, in particular, Section 51 to the First Additional Protocol to the Geneva Conventions, which says basically you have to be proportional to the threat that you're facing. There's more technical language, but that's really what it comes down to. The threat Israel's facing is the existence of Hamas. Their leadership has said, we will do October 7th a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time. We found copies of Mein Kampf and ISIS literature. This is a Nazi-based organization intent on annihilating Israel and the Jewish people. So the threat is Hamas's existence at all. Therefore, the proportional response has to be eliminating Hamas as an organization that's capable of functioning. Specifically, international law says that you cannot create harm to civilian people or infrastructure that is excessive in relation to the military objectives that you need to seek. So that could mean if Hamas puts 100 civilians in front of a rocket launcher, that 100 civilians might not be excessive if the rocket launcher has to be destroyed. So that's the way that international law works. It's not based on numbers. But if we do want to talk about numbers, here's an interesting number that hasn't been spoken about much, but really should. Hamas claims that Israel's killed over 11,000 people. Now, there are a number of reasons why that figure might not be accurate, but even assuming that it is, Israel's destroyed over 15,000 targets. That means, if you do the math, Israel has killed less than one person per strike, and over a fourth of Israel's strikes have killed no people at all. This is a military that's capable of destroying hundreds or thousands of people with a single attack, and you find that has killed less than one person per attack. That alone shows you an enormous amount of restraint and caution on the part of Israel.
I actually want to look at this from a tactical level too, as long as you still have you in the studio, Daryl, because you have experience fighting on the ground there. Can you give us a description of just what that sort of dense urban fighting looks like?
I think it's one of the main complicated urban area that has been under fight during the last dozens of years. What you see here is the IDF identify as the targets of the enemy of those murderers. And you have to close a very close circles. First of all, plans and under your movement in activities, unless you have to be on readiness. That's the way of evacuating people from the north to the south, because in everywhere you have people that are coming from the underground tunnels, using RPGs, anti-tank missiles, etc., shooting, launching, and going back to the underground tunnels and escaping and using civilian areas as a shelter for themselves, like what you see tonight with the hospitals and what was described by the Israeli. And I think by this, Israel shows why Israel is waiting 3 days near Shifa Hospital, in order, first of all, to strengthen the legitimation, to show the people we prefer to not to, and it's danger for the soldiers, not to move, not to maneuver, and to be around Shifa, but show the world evidence what's going in Shifa or in Antisi Hospital or in others, just to bring the right of us to react and also to prepare a very clear intelligence to find the tree.
Hindi ba naman sila magaganda ang mata?
And Daniel, I want to go further into that, because ultimately we do see these images, people firing RPGs from outside hospitals, these command centers being built directly under the hospitals. Under those circumstances, what is permitted? What are the actions?
Well, what's happening here is really extraordinary, because there's what's permitted and there's what Israel's doing, which is far more restrained than what international law requires. Right now, Israel's established a humanitarian corridor to allow civilians to escape out of the combat areas into relative safety. As civilians have been escaping, Hamas has been firing on Palestinian civilians, and the IDF has been protecting those civilians by returning fire. Now, this is extraordinary. Think about what this means. The IDF is protecting Palestinian civilians. Hamas is attacking Palestinian civilians. This is, at the very least, rare, if not entirely unique in the history of human civilization, that a country is actually protecting the enemy's civilians while the enemy combatants are attacking those civilians. It's simply unheard of. So what Israel would have to do under international law is not intentionally target civilians, not act in a way that excessively harms civilians. And when civilians are being used as human shields, it's very difficult to do. What Israel's done is gone beyond that. Israeli soldiers are fighting to protect his civilians while Hamas is shooting at them. So far, over 40 Israeli soldiers have fallen. That means it is not an exaggeration to say Israeli soldiers are literally sacrificing their lives to fight for Palestinians. That is simply extraordinary.
I mean, given how many steps Israel has taken to reduce civilian casualties, to protect the enemy's civilians in this case, how does Israel get the international community, the UN, and all these world leaders saying it's excessive to just back off?
Well, Hamas has been working on this for years and building the case for this for years. It began with the Durban conference in 2001, which was called the diplomatic intifada. They've invested a tremendous amount of money and diplomacy and resources into building an image of Israel as being excessive. And the reason they've done that is because it's the only way they can win. Militarily, they can't beat the IDF. The only way they win is if the IDF stops its operation before it's complete. So they're attempting to create a situation in which the IDF might be tempted to do that. I don't think that's going to happen, but they see that as their one path to success, and they've invested a tremendous amount in trying to accomplish that.
You have a very clear example what happened on the second day of the war, when Hamas tried to make a big noise all over the world that Israel killed in the hospital hundreds of people by launching or striking them from the air. Later on, what was found and what Israel proved, that it was a failure launcher of rocket from Jihad Islamic, I think. How many people have been killed under this report? I think even less than 5.
The report claimed it was 500. European intelligence agencies have established that it is somewhere between 10 and 50. So when we look at these figures of casualties, some of them aren't even real at all. Some of them are people that Hamas has shot. Of the 10,000 rockets Hamas has shot at Israel, 10% of them have fallen short and landed in Gaza. And on top of that, the Associated Press recently released a report exposing that Hamas, as a rule, never distinguishes combatants from civilians when they give these casualty figures, and never distinguishes the cause of death, whether it was from an Israeli strike or from Hamas shooting them itself. This is the Associated Press saying outright that the figures the world has are not reliable.
As more as the reports that are coming Gaza will be under showing the evidence. They need even to be a little bit really brave in order to give these reports against the wind that are coming from the street in some capitals in Europe, and also making a test to the leadership of Europe in some countries, while they understand the atmosphere in the streets. A lot of Muslim civilians, and millions of them that are living in their places. So what you see from the EU statement before, what you show, it's something that is not usually, it's taking a lot of effort. Why? Because this is our situation for many years, and I think today, by the way, what we are doing and trying, we will not win that legitimation, but we will succeed to make it more and more narrow, to convince more and more high figures in this world that what's going in Gaza, it's a big lie.